done a video like this before, but I do enjoy watching those videos where a person answers questions that they ordinarily wouldn't share. And honey, some of y'all didn't hold back, and yes, I'll address it. Plus, I'm working up the nerve to eventually go live, and so this Q&A format seemed like a good place to start. Now, there are a few categories of questions that I won't be addressing in this video, and that's because each January I have always done a very candid share about topics that are going on behind the scenes throughout, the previous year. And so conversations that are related to my fertility journey, my goals for the upcoming year, and a few other topics, I just prefer to couch them within that annual conversation because there's often a lot of backstory that I want to kind of fill you in on. And in this video, I'm just trying to address as many questions as possible. All right, so let's start off with the first question by Janine M. Joy. And she said, Cassandra, why don't you wear a wedding ring? Well, juicy. I can assure you that nothing nefarious is going on and that everything is well on the home front. So here is my engagement ring and band. But you're right, you're hardly ever gonna see me wear it. Trey could have tied a piece of string around my finger, and I joke that that's what he should have done. The truth is, when it comes to jewelry, apparently I'm just not that sophisticated. I have always loved beads and gemstones and metals and handcrafted colorful items, and it's supposed to be something that I think you're supposed to like grow out of, but I never have. And I work with my hands a great deal, not only in the kitchen with dough and flour and all these other ingredients, but also in the garden. And so what I realized is that I would have to take my ring off because it's just going to get, honestly, like disgusting. And the only way that I can clean it without voiding like the warranty or whatever that's on it is to take it to K Jewelers, and the mall is in a direction that's about almost 20 minutes away. I don't really go out there for anything. And so I don't want to make those trips out there just to have a lifestyle that I know isn't conducive to wearing, something with diamonds and all that in it. And so I leave it off most of the time. And my husband's such a practical guy that he's like, yeah, that makes sense. Plus, I'm only going to the thrift store, the farmer's market, crystals, and work without him. But he has made me promise that when we go, on vacation, so for example, when we went to Charlottesville, he says, when we go out of town, I do want you to wear your ring. That way, if somebody tries to steal you, they can look at your hand and they know somebody's gonna be looking for you. I always get a little chuckle out of that. But I do enjoy jewelry, and my favorite kind of jewelry are earrings. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I love my dangly earrings. And again, these are pieces of jewelry that I've either picked up from a craft fair, the majority are from, the thrift store or an antique store. There are some women that would not leave the house without, a little bit of foundation or something like that on. I happily will, but if I don't have my danglies on, I feel as if I'm not dressed. So yeah, I enjoy earrings. I still wear rings that I think, but again, they just happen to be more on the costume side. That way, I'm not paranoid about them. If I want to take them off just here in the kitchen and set them somewhere, if something happens, it's, not a big deal. So yeah, that's why I don't wear my ring. So ideally what I just need is a band like he has. But yeah, that's the only reason that I don't wear a ring. I'm gonna put it on now so I don't lose it. So Shay Baker 3012 wants to know, do you think the All-American canner is worth the money? Well, Shay, not a single jar in my pantry of over 500 jars, and now probably thousands of jars filled over the past 7 or 8 years, was ever canned using an All-American canner. Which, to be sure, are things of beauty, but the combination between the size of my burners and my stove being a glass top has excluded me from even thinking about or considering using an All-American canner right now. But if you're canning curious and not sure if you're going to make canning a part of your permanent lifestyle, The Presto pressure canner is a cost-effective entry-level tool that will get the job done. Y'all see me using my Presto all the time and I love that canner. In time, when I have a gas stove, I'd love to have an All-American and be able to pass that down to my kids. They are considerably more expensive, but they are a once-in-a-lifetime investment. Unlike the Presto canners, the All-American seal steam airtight, so there's no gasket that's going to crack or clean or need to be replaced, and that is an awesome feature. The bottoms are also super thick, so you're getting, almost perfect surface to surface heat transfer. If I could get my hands on one, I surely would not turn it down. So really it's your budget and your preference that are the determining factor. All right, next up, Martha Howard 7734 asks, how did you come up with Thor for your dog's name? This is Thor. Say hi, Thor. And he is my 8-year-old fur baby. He is a light fawn French bulldog. Now he goes by many names, and Thor is actually short for Thornitis. We also call him Booba, a nickname that my husband gave him that's just stuck, and Shadow Man, because anywhere I am, he's there being my shadow. Now French bulldogs may be small in size, but they're known for their strong and sturdy build. I thought that Thor would emphasize his compact but powerful physique. Plus, Thor is a short one-syllable name that's easy to call out and for your dog to recognize. Plus, my dad and my husband are Marvel comic fans, so why not give him a superhero name? But believe it or not, Thor is scared of thunder. So when there's a summer storm and I have the door open, he will run over to the door, and Frenchies are judicious barkers, but he'll bark a couple of times and then come over and look at me like, you gonna do something about that? Thor is the best, and until we get our flush baby, he's having fun being the only child. All right, so I've got a question from Becky W 2903. Hey girl, how do you come up with all of these great ways to use your home canned foods? That's where I keep getting stuck, especially on my jams. Well, thank y'all. I think that it's probably a couple of things that I do that really anybody can do. And I want to really emphasize that this is how our grandparents, great-great-grandparents, how everyone was kind of cooking just several generations ago. So one, I would say that before I got into food preservation, I had been cooking for a while, and actually I have a pretty decent sized collection of cookbooks when I would kind of cook exactly to a recipe. And so I am coming from that kind of background of just different kind of meal preparations over time, and then kind of seeing the crossovers between different styles or methods of cooking. Another thing is my dad. Yes, my dad. So y'all, the way that he recalls how my grandma would cook is just incredible. And even though my dad growing up, pretty much did all of like the grilling and the barbecuing and all that stuff, and mom made our everyday kind of meals, my dad knows how to cook. He really does. That was mom's domain. But one thing that but I didn't really see this come out until after I got my apartment, and he would still come up and visit me, mom and dad, and we would cook these meals together, partially because that's just what I didn't know anyone in the area that I lived in, and I just really got into like cooking as a thing that I did. I had to grocery shop almost each week anyhow, and so we would just be cooking in the kitchen, and anytime I am coming up or thinking about like a new recipe that I wanted to make, he's really my thought partner around kind of adding this spice or seasoning or trying it this way or doing it that way. It's my dad, y'all, like for sure, which is why I try to share some of these conversations that we have, or I enjoy sharing meals with him, because he really is, he knows something. He knows his way around a kitchen. Also, I think it has also come from over time, when I really got away from being so prescriptive about cooking with a cookbook, I started realizing, oh, I can do this substitution here or this substitution there. And I can look at a cookbook for kind of inspiration on an idea, but then look at what I actually have going on, because I'm not going to run out to the store because I don't have this or that. I'm going to cook it and say I used this or I folded that in, and it still comes out great. So I just actually have so many like notes in my actual cookbooks of things that I've kind of changed over time or omitted. And then there are also meals that I grew up eating that I will just substitute with seasonal ingredients, right? So again, it's just another iteration of a dish that my mom, you know, had made. And then another thing that I think is fortunate, so it's really all of these pockets of things kind of coming in together. And I do have, because I started when Trina like first got married, I would like print out what our menu plan would be like for the week and different things like that. And I still draw inspiration from that. But it's been different, maybe restaurants or meals that we've had. We don't go out to eat a whole lot, but when we do, they're always at local restaurants. And so it's like, oh man, how did they do this? Like, I loved that taste. And so trying to like recreate that at home. Or places that we've visited, you know, abroad, as I've joined my, you know, husband as he's been deployed. And then also family or friends, kind of like the meal that they're making in their home, but then I'll like make it with a little bit of a twist. And so I think it's really this kind of amalgamation of food experiences that I've had. Yeah, and I think that's what keeps cooking just like interesting and fun. And hopefully, I think that's why it's also important that I kind of like to, I'm joking, but I'm also serious, where I'm like, hey, like, I don't have a recipe for this. I just kind of like, I did it this way, or think about this meal with like a base of these ingredients, but like substitute and change anything you want. I really mean that, because that's how you kind of stumble across, you know, these different meals. And I think that's one reason sometimes I have made things and my husband's like, oh, are we gonna have such and such again? And I'm like, what did I make? I can't even remember exactly what it was. I can't. And so now at least sometimes there are times where like I even go back through my own videos to be like, hold on, what did I make here? That kind of thing. But thanks for asking, Becky. That's the honest answer. It's not super technical, but I am getting better at trying to like stop, write, and share those recipes and the grocery guides that I share each month. But yeah, and jams. Jams are so fun. I think the way to think about them, the way that I think about them, is they are excellent as sauces or spreads. And so, and they're so great because they can lean, definitely typically they're more sweet, but you can make them more on the savory side by adding like different vinaigrettes or like onions and herbs to make those, your jams kind of lean more on the savory side. But I think that they are awesome as condiments or spreads for like your baked chickens or grilled meats or even vegetables. In a way that's unexpected, and especially jams as spreads or sausage or glazes, it keeps them like, those are tastes that you cannot buy them in stores, but you can make them, you know, with ingredients, with recipes that I think our modern cookbooks just don't, they kind of fall short sometimes, right? But, and definitely like older cookbooks as well are inspirational guides that I use too. But yeah, I guess that's where the root of my cooking, how my cooking style has kind of evolved, and that's where it is. All right, so the next question is from Mama Jubby 3385, and she wants to know, what do you consider your best thrifting find? And you know, this was a good one that I had to think about before I settled on an answer, because y'all, there is so much that I have thrifted. I love thrifting. Nearly, probably 80% of the things in our home have been thrifted. And you know, it is a way to really punch above your pay grade with the quality that you can get versus it being, you know, brand new. And so when I think about, I mean, items in my kitchen that I regularly use, including my roaster, my Berkey, I mean, dishes, spatulas, the hand grater that I just got, my tomato mill, our living room set, the wool rugs, blankets, my Pier 1 curtains. Y'all, all of this stuff has been things that I have found either at the thrift store or off of Facebook Marketplace. And I think that that's one thing to kind of take advantage of living outside of a city, is that the density of items that you can find really is there. And so I am taking advantage now of being able to find, a high quality item. But this was difficult. My rocking chair set, oh my gosh. But I did settle on what I think, and there, it's hard to choose. It's so hard to choose. But this is a piece that I use every day, and I've already raved about it in the past, so some of you already know what it is. My cast iron arcade coffee grinder. You know the saying, grinding each day makes the flavor stay. So Tara Bishop 8499 wants to know, when you get your first deer, are you going to process it yourself? When I get my first deer, I'm absolutely going to process it myself. Tara, I think you already knew this. So for one, there isn't even a processor in my county, so I would have to schedule a drop-off and a pickup. Two, that option can get very pricey very quickly. And three, now that I have turkey, chicken, and quail processing under my belt, I am very much looking forward to continuing to expand my harvesting know-how. Plus, and I didn't know this before I started to learn how to hunt, at many of the lodges, they provide facilities for hunters to hang their deer or other game birds for processing. And these facilities are often referred to as game processing areas or game cleaning stations, and they have a lot of features. Yeah, so I can just use their game hanging hooks for proper harvesting and cooling, and then they even have large tables with sinks and running water and plenty of countertop space. There's even waste disposal, refrigeration, and freezing where you can store your meat until you're able to transport it home. So given that, I would actually have a space to do so comfortably. And so, I mean, if I had to bring, the buck or the deer home and do it in my kitchen, or, even in the living room, we do have a long table that has a leaf so I could extend the table and wooden floors. And then also, I'm not going to anticipate harvesting something that I don't have room for if I needed to, do that here at home. Again, in Maryland, we just have an explosive deer population. And so I am aiming for a doe rather than a buck for my first deer that I get, just because of, size and logistics. So maybe more of the wondering behind this question is, am I nervous? And I'm not, because I have gradually had these experiences that are going to prepare me for that moment. And, I really appreciate the connection between food on my plate and the skills that it takes to prepare it. And so again, I see this as another opportunity to hone in my skills as a butcher. And the journey of harvesting an animal is one that I would love for more people to be able to have. I really love the preservation sciences, and I can't wait to get into curing and smoking and aging. Anatomy has come to life to me in a way that I find fascinating, in the way that I couldn't appreciate when I was in high school and it was presented so clinically. There's even artistry, and truly it's another form of craftsmanship in cutting and butchering meat in a way that I am gaining skills in, but I still have that deficit. And I very, very, very much appreciate these heritage skills that, we once just all knew that have become lost. And I'm looking forward to harvesting my first deer. Plus, there are all the meals that I can make with venison. I mean, deer is like a luxury meat, even beyond lamb, if you don't know someone who hunts. I'm gonna freeze some, make jerky, salami, can it up. So yes, I'll be harvesting it myself. Now, my mentor said that she would help me, But if she's busy, I guess I'll have to search for a good YouTube video, but I already have my boning blade and my bone saw. All right, so we've got another question that says, how do you stay organized? I inevitably find spoiled food because I just can't seem to get the rotation organization thing right. I totally get this, and I do try to touch on this in my pantry chats, but I'll go ahead now and share kind of like some of my top hits. But this is something that I want to lean in even more over the coming year. So the first thing that I do is I use fridge baskets that are right in my refrigerator. And what fridge baskets are is before I even go to the grocery store to acquire more food, I am very strategic about taking several minutes, 10 minutes, usually less than that is all it takes, to do an inventory of what is already in the refrigerator, perhaps in the freezer, in a cupboard that I need to go ahead and start to fold in over that upcoming, week or for the month. And so before I go to the grocery store to kind of offset with ingredients that can add to what I already need to use, I will actually, let me go ahead and kind of show you. And I want to say this, okay? I think sometimes I'm going to open up my fridge and you know what? It's not stuffed to capacity because my refrigerator is really just used for items that have to stay refrigerated so that I do have kind of an extended shelf life or time to use those ingredients. But I think sometimes when you see fridge tours and I wonder like, is your fridge like really like that? Like how do you use it? I don't have a whole lot going on here in my fridge because it needs to be realistic to what you actually kind of eat and consume, because I think that there is, I don't know, I've come across a lot of these videos and I'm so glad that there are so many other kind of new channels that are popping up and kind of sharing what a week of meal preparation can actually look like, because I feel like maybe this is more around the COVID time period that people were like, stock up, stock up, stock up. And yes, like, of course you want to have, a surplus of food, but I found that the deficit in the utility of those videos was, okay, but like, how do you actually use it? Like your question that you have. And I think a stockpile is only as good as having, a plan to kind of rotate through your food. So it may also be, and look, honey, I was here too. It may actually be, sorry, I think something's kind of in my eye, but I can keep talking. It may be that you are buying too much food and so you aren't able to kind of get to it. That may be it. It may be it as well. I know that for me, I realized and I have heard like from folks to say, hey, Cassandra, you should try Azure Standard. And I do want to eventually, but I haven't pulled the trigger on that because, for a family of two, and of course we have visitors and guests over often, but I'm actually able to stockpile just fine with a regular grocery store. If your family dynamic is a bit different, of course, places like BJ's and Costco's and all that kind of thing makes sense. But let me go ahead and actually show you what is in my refrigerator and these meal bins that I was talking about. All right, so, okay, real life fridge. Again, it's not like stuffed to capacity, but one thing that I do on this top shelf here is this is what I need to consume, and these are like my meals. So I just did some beef pot roast. I found a pot roast on sale, and I just went ahead and threw in the crock pot and I used up some existing seasonal vegetables. I had some carrots and celery and potatoes that I needed to use up, and so I made that. So we're gonna be munching on that this week. And then I also had a chance to make some pinto beans. I canned a lot of it up, but this was a little bit that I wanted to set to the side. So I'm gonna have a meal with my pinto beans and ham, and maybe there's another canned ingredient. Like if I wanna have, I need a vegetable with this, so I'll either pull out, likely some string beans, right, to go along with this meal. Here in the front, actually, I have a use first bin, and this is what, if I get a snack or anything else, honey, this is it. This is the go-to, right? I have just 2 little shells that I need to reuse here. I have a little bit of lettuce that I need to use before that goes bad. I have some guac, and then I have some chicken salad that I made from canned chicken in here. This is our snack option, right? It's ready to go. And oops, oh, one hand. And here I have also some soup that I had made. It wasn't the biggest pot, but again, I needed to use up some vegetables, and I'm gonna pair it. I'm just gonna dump it over, you know, some squash that's there. And here I have some more squash. Again, I'm trying to rotate through this, but I love how I can just, and then I have a little bit of ground beef that I pulled from the freezer. But this is it. Like during the week, it feels so nice to be able just to say, hey, these are 3 meals that I know are leveraging what is already in my pantry. And then another thing that I really try to do to extend that shelf life is I have a lot of fermented ingredients. So I know my sour cream isn't going bad because I make it myself, and it's, you know, fermented. It lasts for months. I mean, it can last for months. We go through it faster than that. Cream cheese that I made. This is my quick bread. You guys have seen me do a video on that. Just some regular milk products. Here's some ham that I'm using for some different soups. I just caught my clearance ham on sale, just some fire cider. Fermented vegetables that are back there too. If I think it's getting ready to go, you know, bad, or I'm not gonna get to it, I ferment it, right? It's gonna extend that shelf life. Then just pretty much basics, right? A lot of these condiments are also fermented for that very same reason. Here's some more fermented mayo and buttermilk, just basic stuff. Little juices that I make from elderberry syrup. Some sauerkraut that I know that I need to get ready to eat. I will go ahead and cap it there, but I just wanted to do that quick little tour. Another thing I do is a piece of advice that you have likely heard before, but until you put it into practice, you don't realize what a game changer it is. And that is to shop your pantry before you even go to the store. So one thing that I have done is I have this little basket, and y'all have seen me, you know, use this before. I found it at the thrift store, and I love it because it is collapsible, so I can just chuck it in my cupboard. But I will take this basket and go, you know, downstairs to my long-term storage pantry just to make sure that I'm pulling up those items that need to be replenished here in my upstairs pantry. I'll open up some of my cupboards and then start to see, hey, what is hiding? Maybe what do I need to start, you know, using? What have I neglected? And I will put it in this basket, and then I will take this basket and either plop it, you know, on my countertop so that when I have my fridge bins, I can start to see, oh, okay, I need to fold in, you know, at least 1 can, you know, of these beans here, or this paste that I bought, or this thing that, you know what, I've got to start folding in these ingredients. And, you know, they're out, and I meal plan around those items. And truly, you're at a good time to start thinking about this, especially if you're thinking about pantry items, because in February, that's National Canned Food Month, and so a lot of canned goods are going to start to go on sale. And so that's definitely when I look at what I have and I start to pull out things with the oldest expiration date. Of course, things are still good even after, you know, the manufacturer's expiration date, but it does allow me to see, okay, when I'm shopping for more canned goods, Cass, you know, still have an inventory of this. Like last year, I had so many cans of pumpkin puree. So I knew that I wasn't going to buy, you know, extra cans of that this year because I needed to get through what I had. Well, I think maybe I just bought like 2 or 3, but not like, I kind of went crazy the year before. But that is so critically important. And I will leave that stuff out on my countertops. Don't get it twisted. It's clear behind here now, just because I don't want it to be too like visually cluttery kind of thing. But I will leave stuff out, and that is my cue. Like, you need to use this, or I will put it in my fridge bins. So that is another hack that I use. Another thing I do is I don't cook by taste. I cook by what we already have on hand and what's in season. And so when I think about the arc across a week, it follows a very predictable kind of pattern. So I know that one meal is a meal that I've already kind of made ahead that's ready to go. So you already saw that I had a couple things that were in containers using ingredients that, yeah, were likely to, you know, expire. So that's one meal that I have. I also have freezer meals. So that's another option where at least once a week I am pulling from a freezer meal that I've already prepared. And again, that recipe is driven by ingredients that I have on hand or are about to expire. At least once a week we have soup, and soup is just, oh my goodness, you can throw anything in a soup, which I enjoy because it keeps it from getting boring, right? And so that's an option that you can use. Casseroles are a nice way. That's one of the reasons, or how I came up with a pumpkin lasagna. It's because I needed to use all of those cans of pumpkin, and you know what? it turned out pretty good. And so it's become a part of our rotation that we use. Also, there's sometimes just a tapas night. I think when it comes to dinner, you think that, or any meal, that everyone has to be kind of eating the same thing. And, you know, that's how food can easily get wasted. But there are plenty of times where, you know, I am pulling out several of my muffin meals where there's just an assortment of, it's pretty much just, I'm saying tapas as a fancy way of, you know, calling it what it is, but just all the many like bits and bobs of, you know, leftovers, and it's kind of out there and we munch on that or eat that. It's enough to make a meal, but not everyone again is eating maybe the same thing. But I think with time you'll absolutely get there. And I would say just start to scale back perhaps. And I know you're probably thinking, oh, well, that was a really good sale, or X, Y, and Z, but it's not. Stocking up really only saves you money, and buying things only really saves you money if you are able to have a rotational plan. And once you have that under your belt, and it takes a while, it takes a little while, right? Like what you kind of see me doing here has been years kind of in the making, and I still want to get to you know, points where I'm preserving and putting away kind of even more, Lord willing, as our family, you know, expands. But start by maybe scaling back for a bit and being confident that you can get through what you have, still with some reserves, right? And then as you're able to do that and be more realistic about, you know, meal planning in advance, cooking with ingredients that you already have, then kind of scale, you know, up incrementally. But those are my best tips in a nutshell. So S Howard 4743 says, your house always looks so clear. How do you manage housework with a full-time job and all of your side gigs? Are you exhausted? I'm a stay-at-home mom / farm girl, and I just can't keep up. I wish I had your energy. So sweetheart, I think you are being too harsh on yourself. And you know, as I was reading this, I had to chuckle to myself because while I may have the cleaner house, honey, I want what you have, which is the kids and the farm. It may just be the stage of life that you're in, and that's okay, especially if you have little ones. Mama, you've got to focus on the nuts and bolts, and certainly as they grow, they'll have chores and can help out more with the housework. What it sounds like is that you have a home where things are getting done, and that's the most important thing. You're putting meals on the table, you are caring for a child or children, you have farm chores, which is a whole thing in and of itself, and you know, that is truly the priority. And homes are places where you actually live, right? They're not a stage. Now let's all just agree to this. The kitchen is a busy place and things can go downhill pretty quickly. And so one of the things I do is I do stop and kind of clean as I go. But really in a kitchen of this size, which is still so much larger than what we had in the apartment, but I am forced to do so because if I don't, I am quickly going to run out of countertop space. And so there's that component that maybe you see me do. I don't know how my kitchen is gonna look when I have a little one. And so I can tell you right now that I do anticipate that, you know, the ratio of attention that I can give to certain areas in my home will likely be different, you know, as it should be. You know, I think the kitchen, because it has so much stuff, and the frequency of use is, you know, never ending, is a place where, you know, I try to keep up with it for sure, you know, absolutely. And you know, it's cleaning as we go. And so that's a big help. But in the other areas of my home, I am more of a minimalist in terms of, you know, what we kind of have in there, because it does just make the upkeep of those spaces, you know, much more easy if all we have to do is go in and kind of like, you know, dust and vacuum and, you know, just make sure that things are in a proper space and place that is already kind of designated, and not making sure that there is, you know, junk or things that we're not using. So that helps out a bit. But it's also just being, you know, realistic as well, right? Where right now, during the summer, this kitchen, I mean, it is hard to find space in here because I have the crock pots going over here and I have fruits and vegetables that are out and canned goods that are cooling, and, you know, the canner is permanently, you know, out here. And, you know, that is just a part of, it's a part of having a home where things are getting done. And so Maybe it's because I have a smaller space where it looks tidier because there's just less space to kind of put things. But you know, I think eventually when I have like Thor, I think he thinks it's a game when I put his toys, you know, in his basket that, you know, he has to at least have 3 toys permanently, on the floor, or I can always tell when he's on the couch because he's kind of ruffled the pillows. And I think that there is a certain, charm that you just have to appreciate where, so one thing I like to do is early in the morning as I kind of put the house to bed at night, and we do our best to kind of make sure that things are up enough. But I'll sneak down early in the morning and just enjoy my cup of coffee before the house like kind of wakes up. But then after, as you're kind of going through the day and your life in your home, it's what a house looks like. It's what a real house looks like, right? And I don't try to, I don't know, like I said, I think when you have a house where it's busy and there are pets and animals and all of those kind of things, your house, it looks right, right? It is. Give yourself more credit for that. And certainly there are times where you clean, a deeper clean, that kind of thing. But other than that, I think it's just trying to do the best that we can, and it's to pick up as we go. We're all personally, on a spectrum. But certainly, honey, I think also just trying to, I don't have to have my kitchen doesn't unravel, I think, as fast, because as I had shared with my meal fridge bins, I've already gone through and stuff was already kind of sorted and together. So it makes cooking and cleaning like easier. I front load as much as I can. So I think that is probably very helpful. But yeah, I don't know. Give yourself grace and give yourself some credit. And in terms of, do I get exhausted? Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Hopefully you have heard me talk about before where there is a Cassandra that appears a couple of times a month where I just know I don't have the energy for it. But I anticipate and I plan for her to show up by saying, hey, it's a freezer meal day, it's this, it's that. Like I just need to, I call it recalibrating, right? Where there are some times where I come home, I let Thor out, and I just crash for a couple of hours. And then, I rejuvenate. There's this poem by Theodore Roosevelt. It's called The Man in the Arena, and it talks about how it's not the critic who counts. And there's this line in that poem that says, how it's talking about how he spends himself in a worthy cause. And so like it really is exerting kind of like this energy, and sometimes isn't really sure about, what the outcome is going to be. And sometimes I think a lot of times with the energy that I am, it's both enthralling, but also definitely there's this energy exchange, right? When I'm working at work and doing even the things here around my home with food preservation and learning new skills. And so there are definitely times where my head hits the pillow and I am just, and then before you know it, you're like, what? It's time to wake up again? But I think being able, when you think about the totality of experiences, that you're having, that at least you are spending that energy in a worthy cause, right? It is going towards these memories that you are making, or an excellent meal that was on the table, or pride in being able to raise your own meat and vegetables and those things. And so when I think about all the ways that you could be tired or depleted, the root of that is something that is so just genuine, and something that if you have to put your energy towards it, you know what? Yeah, like I'm gonna put it, I appreciate that I can put it towards that, right? And so actually when I did the deer hunt, that was a very long day. I had got up probably about 3:30. We didn't leave there until sunset, so maybe it was around a little bit after 6. I still got home and then made a quick dinner for the boys. And then the following day, Dad and I went out for tea in DC. And I was looking forward to that, but I was like, whoa, I could really just sleep. I really want to sleep in this morning. But you know what? Like you drudge on. That's not exactly the word I want to use, but yeah, initially like that's, what I did. But then once you're in it, you're like, yes, another great day. and I was exhausted again, but there can be a good exhaustion. Also, there are times where no, you really need to to rest. But yeah, I get exhausted for sure. And I do take time to certainly, restore. Sometimes it's, a few hours, sometimes it might be, a day. Sometimes you need that, right? But it's a part of the human experience. And yeah. All right, so our next question comes from His Simple Blessings 2200. She says, I absolutely love your channel. Thank you. You inspire me every time I watch you. My question is, of all the things you do, growing, preserving, etc., what is one thing you are still struggling with? Mine is making sure I get everything preserved in some form. I always manage to have something go bad before I get to it. It's not time management. I always have lofty goals, and sometimes my fibromyalgia gets in the way. So I guess in reality, my struggle is expecting too much of myself. I want to be able to do the things I could just a few years ago. I hear ya. I hear ya. And to answer the first part of this question, one of the things that I am still struggling with, and I say struggle, but I'm also kind of reconciling it, and kind of some of the things that you shared here. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I understand the importance of sourcing and providing quality food for my family, right? And that's why I have shifted over these past few years of cooking from scratch, cooking with seasonal ingredients, and really kind of taking control of the food that we are consuming through preservation and all of those things. But the thing is, and y'all have seen it because I don't want to shy away from it. I'm here to transparently share my journey. That is not perfect at all. It's the process of becoming. It is saying, hey, it's not perfection. It is progress each year. But I do, and sometimes, I'll even get this comment too, which is I'm not eating like 100% organic. There are times where I still buy, bread from the store, those kinds of things. And, in my heart of hearts, I want to be able to eat, in that way. But there are a couple of very, just real factors that, we're not going to be able to do that, right? Like some of them are, it's time, right? I do work, full-time outside of my house, and my work days are at least, a 9-hour day. And so there's that. And so I do what I can with what I have. And I think that that is the expectation. And as I become more adept and my skills continue to improve, year after year, and I can more and preserve more because there's that automaticity that you build with practice. I have to give myself credit for that. And then also as we work towards, the homestead that we want to have, the reality is that we are maintaining, a budget for different items in all areas of our life. And so what our food allowance is what it is. And I stay within that because we pretty much do, sorry, I just got a text message here, but we pretty much do like the Dave Ramsey approach to finances. So we have buckets of, money that are going towards these multiple, budget categories. And so there are times where each year I am able to, as I kind of, have finagled things over the years, I'm able to buy more items that are organic, but not all, right? So I think that's one thing that I'm struggling with, but I just have to reconcile that we're doing the best that we can with what we have. And I'm still proud that I have a skill that, one day when I am able to offset, the majority of our meat coming from our own farm, that I will be able, to say that like, hey, like this is sustainably sourced, meat, and that's really important. And I hear you. I think it's tricky, right, in the beginning, and especially if you have something as serious as fibromyalgia, to kind of work within your energy levels. And, you know, you have to be, I had to be, you know, realistic with that too, right? And so I don't have the biggest preservation pantry, you know, out here, right? But, you know, darn it, for the time that I have and the energy that I have, which is why I always emphasize small batch canning, right? Like, it really does add up. And I bet that you are doing so much, right? You're still probably doing more than maybe what you were several years ago, right? Because things, sometimes there's that automaticity that's in there. And, you know, I think it's still important to give yourself credit for what you can do. That is always the focus, right? And I would say this, the reality I kind of see sometimes, and I am so appreciative of some of the content creators that will share this with you that are, you know, online, is that, you know, they also have help that's helping them, or they have staff like helping them to kind of get some of these projects done. But it sounds like it is just you know. In my house, with what's being canned, when my parents come up, you know, they'll help me with, you know, snapping, you know, the ends off of beans or different things like that. But I mean, the majority of it, it is just me, right? And so when you don't compare yourself, when there's an equal comparison, right? I think that's more of a realistic picture than, you know, if you're looking at someone who, you know, their business is, you know, related to, you know, that kind of thing, or production, or showing you these things. And so, yeah, girl, I would say give yourself credit. I know that you're doing a lot. And the fact is that your heart and your intent is in the right place, and you're doing the best with what you have. And that's all, that is all any of us can do. All right, so these next questions are kind of bucketed into what I would call my future farm plans. All right, next up we have a question from Kate's Caring Corner 6765, and she wants to know, are you planning to have your farm when your husband retires from the military, or will he still be enlisted when you purchase your farm? If he's still in, then what will that look like? If he's retired, what will that look like for him? How much of the farm will he take on? Will he have a civilian job outside of the farmstead? So this is a really good question, and it's one that it hasn't changed, and I've addressed before, but I don't bring it up all the time, so I guess it's good to kind of just let you all know. So yeah, the plan is he has now a little less than 4 years in, and so it may be that maybe within a couple of months of him getting out, we would feel comfortable, you know, making that move. But I would not, it doesn't make sense just with the nature of his work, and for us to move and his job is still kind of taking him, you know, away for like, you know, weeks at a time, or just different things like that, because I wouldn't want to be in a new, you know, location by myself, or to not have us, because I couldn't fully kind of settle in at that point. And so there's really, when I had talked about this last year, you're watching someone who, you know, it's not going to be a fast, like, homestead dream or build, right? By the time we move, we would have been in our townhouse for, you know, over 10 years. This is my 4th year now on YouTube, and I'm telling you, hey, it's still many years away. And I think these are the cards that we have been dealt. This is how we're going to kind of strategize our way to our homestead. And, you know, that's okay. I like being on YouTube to share this journey of someone, which has always been the premise. I know that we want to homestead, but how do you navigate that, or transition into that lifestyle while you have your full-time job, and it's one that you anticipate fully having? And so yes, my husband retiring, we don't plan to move before that. Certainly, like, there's no, like, there's not going to be a video next year or anytime soon where it's like, surprise, we found land. I mean, interest rates are like insane right now, you know? I had shared before that the only way I could see the timeline moving up, and this is more so, you know, it is in my heart of hearts kind of thing, but it may not be what happens is, and I'm already so pleased just to the news that I shared with you all, in October, that my parents that are in Florida, I grew up here in Maryland, but they are looking to come back up here. But if they found, you know, something where we could, you know, live like a larger piece of property and we could live there kind of like together, two separate houses is what we would be looking at, then that would be something where the timeline kind of moves up. But they're in a very different place than what, you know, Trey and I are in. So yeah, he's gonna retire from the military first, and then once he retires, we are looking at having a small, you know, homestead. I guess you would classify it as a hobby farm, where we're able to offset components of what we can source for ourselves, a greater percentage. But our point is not to be like completely self-sufficient, because we're more interested in community kind of self-sufficiency, where if I don't have access to that, I know someone who does, right? And we can either, you know, barter, or I'm directly supporting, you know, another family's business or trade. And so that's what we're looking at. And the goal is for him, because he's going to be in his early 40s when he retires. And so he'll gain, you know, another job, and even that will feel like relief after being in, you know, the military, which we were both raised in military, you know, families, but there will come with that a certain freedom that we haven't had, right? Because now we can talk about the future with more certainty, just in terms of, you know, where we're going to live, and, you know, how we can manage our time, and things like that. And so, yeah, he will continue to work. I'm about halfway through the years that I need to retire, to get, you know, my pension. And that's not something that I want to walk away from, because pensions are like, they're very difficult to come across. And I mean, these will still be modest amounts, but if we keep living the way that we are, and Lord willing, you know, he still gives us health and strength, we can pull this thing off in a way that allows us to continue, as I said, to work full time and have a small farm. You know, I love my green stalks. I will always garden in them, but I would love to be able to just have enough space to really have multiple kind of garden beds and a greenhouse, and to have, you know, livestock, which even when we move, this isn't happening, you know, automatically, right? Because that's still new for me, right? And so there will still be ways that we gradually kind of build up what our small kind of homestead looks like. And I'm excited even about that, but it's not going to be, this is not like the quick and fast way to homestead. This is like the slow route. This is the slow train, like over here, but one that I think makes it doable, or like you can see, I don't know. I just, I think the reality is, sorry, I'm like really taking this question kind of left, but I know some of the questions that are kind of coming up. So like there's another question here that comes from at the Cherokee 1017. When you eventually have your dream homestead, will you be able to work it full time, or will you still have your 9-to-5 job too? I will still have my 9-to-5 job, because honestly, like I would have to be working, doing like this YouTube thing in an entirely different way than what I am doing it right now. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I like having my professional job like as that bucket, and then being able to share here on YouTube in a way that is like, it's just my joy. It is very genuine. There's no pressure. It can turn into, and if that is the creator's intent, absolutely, right? I can only just share with you like this is, and you kind of see this on my channel, you know, in the way that it works out. I wouldn't want to have the pressure of like putting out content, having to do this because now this is like my livelihood at stake. I don't want to do that around something that is just so, there's just such a great feeling around what I have around my channel. And you know, I'm not going anywhere. I'm certainly dedicated to it, but I don't want it to replace. I love my job. However, work is work, right? And you know, it's good to have that mindset towards that. I don't want that to like cross over, you know, if that makes sense. I don't know. You could call me scared. I don't know, but I just I do intend to like keep working. Why not? I think it's a blessing that we have, you know, our jobs. And so yes, I will continue to work. As I said, I'm about halfway through the years that I need, and we can make it work. There are so many people even here on the channel that have shared, like, Cassandra, what you're doing is exactly, you know, what we did. And I think that there are more stories that are kind of servicing, kind of showing this, like people that have this professional career. And actually, when I did research, there is this growing class of folks, like that's what they're doing, right? Like you are still working and you have a small hobby farm, right? No, I'm not gonna have like sprawling, you know, acres and like all the things. That's okay. I don't even, for what I think that I can still enjoy and appreciate, that seems like a lot. That seems like way too much, and beyond maybe what I am able to do, right? I'm talking with the perspective that I have now, but I absolutely want you to know that I would be so satisfied. I would love to have at least 3 acres. 5 is more of the comfortable spot. Certainly, I think land is something that you can just try to get as much as you can, even without trying to have it all be productive. But that's kind of what we're looking at, a small hobby farm. All right, so our next question comes from @Miss24. Are you ever planning to come out with a cookbook or just a knowledge book? Love your channel. You're positive and absolutely love your energy. I've learned a lot from you and have been canning for years. Wow, I certainly appreciate that. I think that's the thing about canning. You know, you do it in isolation, but there really is this community that's there. And so, as I said, that's why I love watching other canners on YouTube, because you get to poke in their kitchens and kind of see like what they're doing and how they do it. You know, people are starting to ask me this more and more about a cookbook. And initially I kind of took that with a grain of salt, like, no, I'm not doing a cookbook. Like, I'm showing you what I'm doing. Like, you know, either I'll put it in a blog post or like, just watch me like on YouTube. Like, that's what I'm doing. But it is interesting. It is something that I think does make a little bit of sense for me to do. And I don't have a timeline, you know, on this. I don't have like a publishing deal or anything like that in the works. Like I don't. Because I started to realize, and I realized this more so actually at the HOA conference, where it is an opportunity where you meet the vendors. They will have like a tent that's set up and a table, and that's where you're kind of showing your personal resources. And when I set up my tent, I don't have anything to sell. And so I said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and just share the resources that I have used. And so I had probably about 15 or so, you know, canning and gardening books that are just part of my library. I have much more than that. But folks are like, well, Cassandra, like, you know, where's your thing? Or like, hey, but I really liked when you did X, Y, and Z. It would be great for you to just like have it as a reference. And I realized that as I continue to put out like more and more content and just to share, that it would be helpful for some folks. This isn't everybody. Everybody doesn't need it. But it would be helpful to kind of say, hey, these are my, here's a deep dive with explanations and charts and recipes where I'm just, it's a collection, right? That quick reference guide to kind of share. And so eventually, yes. Oh my gosh, it feels kind of like overwhelming to even think about that process. But I would love to. I think, yeah, for sure. So I'm starting to be a little bit more intentional just with archiving some things in a place where I'm like, okay, one day when I get ready for this, this reference that I want to put out. Here's the bank of things that I've talked about. It's easy to even forget about that, over time. All right, so A.W. Walton wants to know, when did you actually make the decision to start your townhouse farm, and what inspired you to also start to video the journey? This is a really good question. And I would say that it wasn't one particular aha moment that led me to starting my townhouse farm, because there were many different things that were already kind of in effect and that were happening that I had taken kind of action on. So I'll put a pin in that, and then I'll loop back to it at the end of this. But I want to say I know the exact moment though when I was inspired to start videoing the journey. And it was likely like almost 1 year into COVID, where I had realized that, and this was the time where there was so much, at least from what I was kind of, hearing on the news, where people were, couldn't find meat at the store, couldn't find eggs or bread or any of those kind of basic ingredients. And what I realized, and that's where I thought, because you can think, because it was just me, right? I didn't have a sounding board or other, people that I knew that were also in a townhouse doing, like food preservation and trying to garden with intent and all of these kinds of things. But that's when I realized, oh, Cass, like, you're like, I wish there was a way that I could tell people and show people that I had meat on my shelf, right? Because I had been canning meat, at this point for several years. And so I had a stockpile. I had no reason to rush out to the store. I had been freezing my eggs in bulk and putting them on, my, fitting over like 50 eggs in a gallon size bag, for years at this point. I had, fruits and vegetables and all of these things that I knew how to make, shelf stable. And so I remember that there was a time, and this is where, so I really wasn't in the loop in terms of, predictions about lockdowns and all that stuff kind of happening, because it was just, my husband had deployed in January and things, happened in March. But before he deploys, it's just rough, on a military spouse. I have to intentionally almost eliminate my news intake, because, I just worry, so much. It's just not good for your mental health, especially with what he was working on and doing and all that stuff. And so I really didn't know like what was going on. And I remember when they had announced that schools were going to be closed for a week, I was like, oh yeah, I can get so much candy done. So I was in the produce department. And I remember like people were looking at me like, why are you getting these things that are about to like expire? I don't know. They didn't say this to me, but like there was a look like, you need to be over here getting that. And I was like, no, I'm good. Because I was good. I had enough. And I thought, man, how powerful would it have been where I'm sitting in a grocery store and canned foods are wiped out, right? Like the string beans are gone and corn and everything else. But these people are panicking because they don't have right now, the skills or the tools to be able to look at all this fresh produce that's not being touched at all. No competition in this area of the store at all, right? Because you're not able to preserve it, right? So I don't mind buying all of these, the fresh produce, because I have a skill, because I own the means of production with my canner and my dehydrator and fermentation to, make these foods shelf-stable. And I thought, man, how powerful is that, right? Sourdough got popular during that time, but I already had, my sourdough bread and all that stuff going. And so I just really wanted to share. And at this time, I knew that the root of wanting to farm was something that we were pursuing very seriously. And I kept searching, because pretty much on YouTube, you can type in anything and something eventually pops up that's close enough to what you're looking for. But I was like, is there someone who does have a full-time job? So isn't like, a full-time YouTuber, but like also like is showing like, hey, I'm serious about this farm dream, but this is where we currently are. Like, what does that look like? And I think there were a few channels, but I think they had discontinued. So that it wasn't like, they were still kind of showing that journey. And I said, you know what? You got the time now, Kat, since I didn't have a commute and my work day was shorter just because there weren't after school activities and all those kind of things. Hey, like, just share it. What is there to lose, So I started sharing, and it was a way not only to kind of share my videos with mom and dad to say, hey, this is what I've been up to this week, but hold on, let me turn this down. This is what I've been up to this week, but in doing so, it allowed me to connect with so many of you that also have a farm dream, or are able to kind of say, yes, this is how you can greatly leverage, not having land or livestock. You still have all of these different options. And that was powerful because, I have a small circle of friends, but I have been on an island outside of, my family's encouragement. And now that I have, Crystal and a few other bird friends and the folks that I was able to meet at HOA, but you're on an island by yourself, and so you're connecting with the stories that you see online. But I'm just so happy to share the bits and bobs of my everyday life in a way to kind of share with folks how you don't have to rush, and there are advantages to being in a space and place, and that preparation that goes into successfully launching into a homestead in a way that may not be covered as thoroughly. And so I'm just happy to share and put that out there for, and hopefully it lands with that person at the right time and space, to see someone else and how, take away from my journey what you can, find a way to kind of adapt it to where you are, but I wouldn't take away. And I so value this time that I've had of preparation in my townhouse where I can, make mistakes, grow over time, really build capacity and knowledge and know-how, so that when I move into having, land and livestock, that I really have, the skill set and the credibility and the community behind me to know that, like, yes, this is going to be successful. Because moving to a homestead is a commitment, not only in lifestyle, but monetarily, right? Your money is going like into the machinery and the equipment and the feed and the care that you need in order to live this life. And I feel there's so much confidence that I have in a way that I would not have if I wasn't kind of doing these things, these steps of preparation. So that was definitely what I wanted to kind of share and showcase. And I'm so happy that others have been either inspired by that and are also sharing some of their own journeys, because it's important for sure. All right, so Pomeroy65 wants to know, what is your favorite meal? And this one was really, I didn't have a meal that like boom immediately popped up, because for me, I've had so many excellent meals where, it's not even just what I ate. It is like the memory also that is attached to it. It could be the like the conversation that was had, who I was sharing the meal kind of with. How that meal was anchored within the context of an experience or an event. That also adds so much meaning to a meal, because for me, it could also just be that, we were having a bowl of soup, but it was a bowl of soup that we had after we came back from this event and we made it together. Like, all of that is tied into the meal as well. And I think also, I just plumb enjoy food, right? And so I was thinking to myself, well, are you talking about like for breakfast or lunch or dinner or the time of year? I mean, all of those things just, all of those things just tie into what you would say is a favorite meal. And I think there are also recipes that, you know, I won't be able to have again because it was a recipe that, you know, my grandmother made, or one of the church mothers made that is passed on, and you're not gonna get that flavor the way that they made it, you know, again, like that kind of thing. But those were also some of my favorite meals. But I thought about it and thought about it. And if I had to say a favorite meal, it would be a cross between a good bowl of shrimp and grits, which I think really kind of ties in my love of, you know, I'm a Maryland girl. I love my seafood. I love my seafood. But there's definitely this Southern style of cooking that my dad has really just cultivated that taste into all of these years. And a good bowl of shrimp and grits done right. It's also the meal that if I go out and if it's on the menu, like I'm gonna try so-and-so's version of their shrimp and grits and kind of put it on a hierarchy, the way, you know, Mom and I do with Maryland crab cakes. And then if it's not that, like a close second would be, because you can't find this everywhere. You cannot find it everywhere, but a good pot of gumbo, Southern gumbo, y'all, right? You cannot rush that dish. And so I think that those would be my favorite meals. I have shared before, it's in actually, y'all know how I just tuck in these recipes in different videos. But I have shared a version of how I like to prepare my shrimp and grits. It was in a fermented February video because I actually put my fermented squash kraut on top of it. I know, don't judge it until you've seen it, all right? But yeah, I would say, you know, a really good bowl of shrimp and grits. All right, y'all, so I have tried to be thorough in answering those questions, and in doing so, I have been chatting your ear off. So I'll put a pin in it here, but if I have not been able to answer your questions, you know what? I had fun doing this, and so it'll be likely something that I will do again. Until then, I'll see you in my kitchen or garden soon. Take care, friends.